Okay, I'm going to get rolling on this intro because we got some good numbers here and it's after 6 o'clock. So bear with me. I've got to do the electronic script to conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance. The Fairfax County Athletic Council needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It's a bit cumbersome, so I ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of the Fairfax County Athletic Council is participating from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to ask Jason to conduct a roll call and ask each member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to assure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. Take it away, Jason.
All right. Braddock District, Marcia Pape Daniels.
Good evening. This is Marcia Pape. I am calling in from my home office in the Braddock District.
Thank you. Braddock alternate, Mark O'Meara.
I am here at the movie theater as usual.
Thanks. Drainsville, Greg Beckwith.
I am here calling from my cell phone from the state of Florida.
And Drainsville alternate, Brian Lewis. Hunter Middle, James Elder.
Here.
And alternate, Harold Leff. Lee District, Lisa Mickey.
Good evening. This is Lisa Mickey from Lee District.
Thank you. And Lee District alternate, Bill Bright.
Bill Bright is here.
Thank you. Mason District, Barbara Lowry. Are you there, Barbara?
Shows that she is.
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me now, Jason?
Yep, you're all good.
Okay.
Mount Vernon, Lester Munson. Mount Vernon alternate, John Corley. Providence, Steve McLaughlin.
I'm here in the Providence District in my home.
And alternate, Clark Gray. Springfield District, Mike Thompson.
Yes, sir. Mike Thompson here.
And alternate, Mark Hilbrun. Sully District, Gary Flather.
Gary Flather here in Centerville.
And Sully alternate, Mark Abbott. Diversity at large, Mark Fernandez. Or alternate, Eric Sohn. Member at large, Catherine Quinn.
Catherine Quinn here from Ruston.
Thank you. And member at large, alternate, Anne-Marie Swope.
Anne-Marie's here.
Thank you. Town of Clifton, Jeff Stein.
Jeff Stein is here from Clifton.
And Town of Herndon, Roland Taylor.
Roland Taylor here, Town of Herndon.
Thank you. Town of Vienna, Sam Altoff. Baseball Council, Rob Haney.
Rob is here.
Basketball Council, Steve Bergstrom. Basketball alternate, Stu Clark. Fast pitch softball, Susie Williamson. Fast pitch alternate, Ryan Buchanan. Football Council, Mark Miena.
Mark Mann is here from Duck, North Carolina.
And Football Council alternate, Ted Hollingsworth. Lacrosse Council, Marianne Wagner. Lacrosse alternate, Dave Paddock. Slow pitch softball, Carl Cohen.
I'm here from my home. Yeah.
Thank you. Alternate, Christine Iddip.
I'm Christine's boss, Joe, in her place tonight.
Got it. Thank you, Joe. Soccer Council, Lula Bauer. Alternate, Trish Moxie.
I'm here in Springfield.
Volleyball Council Chuck Pruitt,
I'm here from McLean.
and alternate Rob Bailey. Women's Sports Programs Jenny Cantwell, and alternate Hillary Richardson.
Good evening. I'm calling in from my home office in Reston.
Great, thank you. And Fairfax County Park Authority Mike Thompson,
Yes, sir.
and Kurt Lewis,
Here in my office in Fairfax.
and School Board Bill Curran, Melanie Marin, and Vicky Garner, and NCS Sarah Allen,
I'm here.
Keisha Dodson,
Here.
Karen Navisato, Mark Martino,
Here.
and that's it. I think we have a quorum, Steve.
Thank you. And I'll just jump a little bit ahead before getting back. I think I want to welcome the two new members that have been appointed. I think Ted Hollingsworth for football is there, and now he's unmuted, so he can say he's here.
I'm here.
There you go. Welcome, Ted.
Thank
Also,
you.
Mark Fernandez, the diversity rep, if Mark's here. Okay, getting back to, I'm going to leave the virtual gavel there with Jason so that I can be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the Fairfax County Athletic Council.
Second.
Second, this is Marcia.
The motion is approved.
Steve, this is Marianne Wagner. I just want to say I dialed in a minute or two late.
Gotcha. I got you. Thanks, Marianne.
Thanks.
Welcome, Mary Ann. Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures. The fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the Fairfax County Athletic Council to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that, as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of the Fairfax County Athletic Council and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the Fairfax County Athletic Council may conduct this meeting electronically via Microsoft Teams, and that the public may access this meeting by calling 1-571-429-5982, 500-507-768, hashtag. It is so moved.
Do I hear a motion?
Second, Marcia.
Motion is approved.
Finally, it is next required that all of the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself, are necessary for the continuity in Fairfax County government, and/or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the Fairfax County Athletic Council lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved.
Second,
Thank you.
Motion is approved.
I think Barbara does a better second than you do, Marcia.
I didn't get a chance to get in
gee,
there.
Mark, you're really picking on me.
No, Barbara never gets a byline.
Thank you. I'm going to move on. I don't believe we have any citizens to address council, in which case I'll go to the presentations and welcome back our good friend Jesse Ellis, Mental Health and Sports. Jesse, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all again. It's been a while. I know that you've had some in the last couple months, some conversations around teen mental health, and so I was asked to come and provide a bit of an update. The document that you sent was really what that was sent to you is really what I'm going to outline and try and give you a sense of everything that we're seeing and hearing right now. Much of this probably won't be any surprise to you, but the pandemic and everything that's been going on has been really hard on a lot of kids. There are a lot of kids that are doing okay, doing well, and this kind of setting can actually work okay for. But there's a whole lot of evidence that there's a lot of kids that are really struggling, and what it really comes down to is that lack of connection with folks, right? So they're not in school. They are had so many activities, including sports, canceled or moved virtually, and the ability to have the same kind of interactions and connections with people makes it really hard. Add to that everything else that's going on in the country right now. Add to that just a lot of the approach, the disjointed approach to how we're even dealing with the pandemic, right? And to kids, to a lot of kids, messages and explanations that seem to contradict each other or don't make sense. Can't go to school, but we can play basketball. You're saying that gotta wear masks everywhere, but it's okay if I'm not wearing a mask while I'm playing. Or here I have to wear a mask while I'm playing, and here I don't have to wear a mask while I'm playing. We're getting lots of reports of kids that are just really stressed out from the whole situation. I will speak personally from a parent who's got two kids that are very much involved in sports. The fact that they have been able to restart even way back in the summer and continue with their sports has been so important to them. It is the chance for them to see and connect with their friends. It is the chance for them to see in real life an adult who isn't a parent or a next door neighbor that they can talk to and connect with. And while all sports are not back, my youngest's house basketball program did not restart this year. And we could have gone, elsewhere, but decided not to do that. But so much of sports are back in one way or the other that it's really important that we recognize the role the sports always plays that important protective role for kids, right? Kids always have found connection, meaning, purpose, identity playing sports, and that's what's so powerful about it. And it's always been such an important part of kids' lives, and has contributed not just to their physical health, but to their mental and social and emotional health. And that's always been the case. Right now, it's even more important because for so many of them, it is the one place outside of school where they have that. And it's really important for us to recognize that. And it's important for us to recognize that in a few different ways. One is, you've likely heard one of the big concerns, and we knew this going in, was going to be that teachers and school personnel are so often the ones who are able to recognize when a kid is in some kind of crisis. And this can be a few different types of crises, right? calls to Child Protective Services have been down over the course of the pandemic, because teachers aren't in a position right now to be able to recognize the signs as clearly as they are able to recognize signs of child abuse and neglect when a kid is coming to school, right? Even if a kid's got their camera on, and lots of kids don't have their cameras on, it would be difficult to recognize that. It would be difficult to recognize behavior changes, difficult to recognize a change in appearance or attitude, or how a kid is carrying themselves, their demeanor, those kinds of things that teachers and others are really trained and to recognize and may be able to make that first call. Coaches need to be part of that right now more than ever. Being able and really, and whether we're talking about child abuse, whether we're talking about substance use, whether we're talking about mental health issues, it's a lot of the same kinds of warning signs, right? It is those changes in behavior. It's a withdrawal from social interactions. It's a loss of interest. It's it can be excessive moodiness, right? It can be stopping participating in certain things or hanging out with friends. And here's the tricky thing, is that all of that stuff by themselves, it's normal teen behavior, right? Like anybody who's raised kids, kids stop hanging out with their friends all the time. They stop participating in activities all the time, right? They go through bouts of moodiness all the time. And that's all normal, regular, fine kind of stuff. But trying to recognize when there's a pattern or when there's multiple of those things happening is really important, because that's when it can really tip you off that something else is going on. So recognizing those things and knowing what to do, knowing when to make the call to Child Protective Services, knowing when to help a kid or family make a call for mental health or substance use services is so important. And again, we're trying to get a grasp around kind of behavioral health, so mental health and substance use. We're trying to get a grasp right now on like what the numbers are. We don't really know if things numbers wise have gotten a whole lot worse or not. What we do know is that the kids that are coming forward and are being referred, the kids that are calling the crisis link, crisis line, the complexity and the depth of the issues that the kids are facing, because everything else is piling on, is just tremendous. And so it's really, again, important to have as many adult eyes on kids as possible, and can't emphasize enough the role of coaches in being able to do that. So the document that we put together, I think, tries to lay out, just really quickly, like what some of these issues are, and some things that parents and coaches and others can think about doing to help kids and try and address these problems from issues from a preventive standpoint, making sure kids are involved in activities and things like that. Putting together some of these warning signs that you should be aware of, but then also making sure you've got the resources and the different places that you can call for help, right? You've got a concern about a kid, the kid can make the call, parent can make the call, you can make the call, you can make the call with the kid, you can call Crisis Link, the crisis line, tell them that you've got a concern about a kid, and then try and get the kid to join in on the call as well. For some people, that's a way to do it. Right, but there's a lot of different resources out there, whether it's Crisis Link, whether it's the school resources. You've got, kids don't always realize how many resources they have in a school, but you've got counselors, social workers, psychologists, school nurses and health aides, all of whom can be a good front door to helping them get resources and support. You can call the Fairfax Falls Church Community Services Board, the CSB, which is our public mental health agency, right? And they can do assessments for kids. They can do referrals. They provide direct services to a lot of kids and families as well. There's a number of programs in place to help kids get access to services, and you don't have to know all of those. You just need to get them to support through Crisis Link, through the school, through the Community Services Board. Any of those will work. We also have a few other resources, good things, tips and ideas, and articles and stuff that are beneficial for anybody who wants to learn more, and then training ideas as well. I think it was probably maybe 2 years ago, last time I saw you all. I came to a meeting with folks from the Eric Monday Foundation, and they are developing a web-based training specifically for youth sports coaches on mental health and suicide prevention and the things that coaches can do. It's really, really good. They are putting final touches on it. I've seen the close to final version. I was so hopeful that maybe it would be ready to launch right now. It's not quite there. Everything is, like everything else, things have been slowed down right now because of pandemic. That is coming. In the meantime, there are still lots of great trainings that you can access for free. In the document are links to the Cognito trainings. These are available through the Community Services Board. They are free, they are online, they are on demand. You can do them on your own time, and really kind of teach adults how to engage with kids, how to talk to a kid and get a kid to open up to you and tell you what's going on in their life, and so that you can then recognize when they need help and know how to get them to that help. If you want something more in depth, the Community Services Board is doing live virtual mental health first aid trainings, which are like 8 hours long and really good, really give you a good insight into the nature of behavioral health issues. There's a kid-focused one, so you're learning about mental health and behavioral health issues for kids and how to react. They're also doing a 1 hour training called QPR, which is a suicide prevention training. There's open enrollment courses that people can sign up for, but they'll also do custom ones. So if you want to have them come out and do a training for your coaches or others in the organizations, they will do that. And again, once the Eric Monday Foundation training comes out, it's going to be really, really good, and we'll hope that you'll be able to get that out as much as possible. So I will stop talking now and answer questions. I see Mark has his hand up.
Yeah, Jesse, two things. One, on page 1, second to the last paragraph, there's a statement that says, never be afraid to directly ask someone, are you thinking of killing yourself or hurting yourself? Has there been any pushback professionally on that? I've heard from two, but we had to, Eric did a capsule summary, and I joined in with him at my Hall of Fame banquet and it went over very, very well. But I got two questions around this area, but not as specific. So again, if you ask that, are you in a position like you're facilitating? What is the professionals, and maybe you don't know now, but maybe y'all can get that back.
No, I do, and I'm happy to share some stuff with you. Having been in the position myself of asking, it is hard, right? It is hard. It is completely natural to think, oh my God, if this kid or adult, anybody, hadn't been thinking of hurting themselves, and then I ask it, are they gonna?
Right.
There's actually a lot of research that shows that asking the question saves lives. You are not putting it in somebody's mind. Anybody who is there has already had the thought, and people will tell you that people who have attempted suicide will tell you that if somebody had just reached out and asked, I would have opened up. Mm-hmm. So it is actually an evidence-based approach. We know, and we know that it does not increase the risk by asking, and actually makes somebody more likely to respond and open up.
Well, I had talked to Eric, Brian, and just recommend he may want to annotate that phrase and say it's encouraged to do that, or something to give the coach or other person a reinforcement that that's the right thing to do, because clearly you could be on a quandary about that depending on what your background is. Second and last item is, Sarah, is it the goal of NCS to possibly mandate this to youth organizations to comply with training of some sort in the future? I.e. right now, we're dealing with the short term. So I'd say, hey, Gary, is this something he could put out to all of SYA and do good, or must it have a more formal setting?
I'll start, and then Jesse, feel free, and Mark too, and Keisha, who's on the line. I don't know that we would mandate it. I think we would probably strongly encourage it and make sure that people get it out as much as they can. So Jesse, I believe your intention was with sending it out that people absolutely would then send it out. If you're looking for maybe a correction from that one paragraph, we could go back and do that and then send it out again and make sure people can pass it along right now. I wouldn't want people to wait. Particularly considering the situation that people are in. Jesse, would you add anything else to that?
No, but I will add that when because you mentioned Gary, Mark, I want to give Gary a shout out. When the Cognito online trainings first came out, Gary was the first person to reach out and put that on the SYA website and promote it to all coaches in the organization, and that's awesome. That's what we hope everybody will do.
No wonder he gets 450 more fields. God darn it. I knew there was something to it. No, Gary, all kidding aside, Gary has been a leader in this area, and I'm looking as a council what kind of guidance we should encourage and give it out to large and small and all sports, because it's definitely a major factor, and it's a good thing.
I'll also just say on the wording in here, most of the wording, particularly on kind of the midsection of this document, including that, was wording that was developed through our Healthy Minds Fairfax office. They went through an extensive process where they collaborated with schools, but then also with lots of families who have been in these situations and have kids that have been in the behavioral health care system in Fairfax, to really focus on the language that was used here, and so it's actually kind of been tested, the language, and it's why we settled on how something is worded. I
don't doubt that at all. I just know from a layperson's perspective that hasn't broached any of this and it's new, it's a natural question that has come up already after our situation, that you may want to footnote that or say, hey, the Wizards have already passed judgment on this. In my words, not that, but, you know, just to reinforce somebody that wants to advance but may hesitate, because that's a couple key words there, you know, about that's going to make people nervous. So annotating that or identifying that this is the proper way to do it, whatever, might help and eliminate some pushback.
Thanks.
We can do that.
Mike, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, two questions. One, based on what Mark was just asking, is it your feeling that the document you sent around should not be distributed? He asks as somebody who's already mailed it to some folks to send around.
I think it should be distributed.
Okay, so we don't have to.
There's other documents that are already out there that use all of this same language.
Okay.
This one was just kind of developed specifically for the sports community.
All right. My second question, do I remember correctly? At least I know that with programs I'm familiar with, it's treated this way. I believe coaches, as well as maybe even board members and folks of youth sports organizations, have a proactive legal obligation in Virginia law to report suspected child abuse. I see Sarah nodding her head.
Yes, sorry. Yes, yes, and I believe that was a new mandate, but yeah, they are considered mandated reporters, and we can get you that notice to make sure and remind you guys. And
well, I think it was several years. I think it was several years ago that became mandatory, and I only bring it up because I don't know that everybody. I know that some programs are proactive and tell their coaches that. I bring it up in this conversation because Jesse. It struck me when you were talking about teachers not being engaged, but coaches are seeing some of these kids, that it's worth just reminding the coaches and the folks in some of these different programs that they are mandatory reports now.
Correct. Also, our colleagues in the Department of Family Services created an initiative that was looking at people beyond teachers to take another look at and make sure we're working to look at signs and symptoms that might be there for youth. So I think we should send that out as well. Jason, I can get that to you, okay? And it's just I think it's one document or a couple documents, but it's just to remind people while coaches, et cetera, might be seeing kids that teachers aren't, especially in person, that they're the other eyes and ears. So we'll get both of those things out to you.
Because I know some sports and leagues have certain requirements. I think it'd be good to remind people that they're mandatory reports, and any documents or whatever is great. It struck me with what Jesse was saying, that it may be several months where coaches are still the primary non-parent, non-neighbor that are interacting with a lot of these kids.
Great point.
Looks like Mark Martino, you have your hand raised. Mark, did you have a question?
Mark, you're muted.
I was muted, so therefore I will start again.
It's just a hard thing. It really is hard.
Our expectation is that we are going to send this document out to our community users along with what Sarah is going to give, and we will send that out as a blast to everyone. Is that what everybody feels like? That's the correct way to do this. Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure. I always want to make sure we're on the same page in terms of what we're going to do. Thank you. I will go back to being muted and stop talking.
And I'll throw this out on your very fine website, Mark. You guys have a coaches resources page that's got a lot of this information as well. We could probably put this on there. It also has linked to the state's training, mandated reporter trainings.
Perfect. Jason, because we can probably ask Amanda to do that, right? That's something we can get done. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, we will certainly do that from our end then.
Mark's back.
I think it'd be appropriate, at least I think so, to make a recommendation to the athletic council to put this on the agenda to reinforce what we talked about tonight, the materials going out to all the members. Some all may not be on, but just a very quick agenda item saying, hey, this is the right thing to do. We ought to do this with vigor and encourage everybody, large and small towns, magisterial district, sports, to do this. I think it's the right thing to do. Wouldn't take 5 minutes. Not go over the presentation, just encourage and have everybody perform due diligence. Barbara Lauer, do I hear a second?
Yes, you do hear a second. Steve, you're muted.
Good God, this is amazing.
It takes multiple clicks these days. That's the hazard. That's the warning of 2020, isn't it? You're on mute. But yes, hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Are there any other comments or questions for Jesse? Hearing none, thank you, Jesse, for the presentation and for the discussion and the materials. Anything we can do to help kids these days is a good thing.
Pleasure seeing you.
I'm going to move on in the agenda. I've got administrative items. We had minutes from November 18th. They've been posted. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
There you go. In a second.
Second.
Is there any objection to approval of the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes have been approved. I'm not going to talk a lot as the chairman because we have several things to report on, so I'll move on. Winter gym use update. I'll just say I haven't played basketball since last March. When am I going to get a gym? That's why I'm sure Mark and the rest have something more to report.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do a little update. As most of you know, we started to use the gyms in FCPS January 4th, I believe was our start date, for basically a small collection of our user groups, our youth groups, and then a couple of adult leagues that we had on the weekend. I am happy to report that for the most part, we have had pretty good success. There have been some glitches. As there always are. One of the things that we didn't really take into account early was that when COVID hit, the custodians at the schools are now treated a little bit differently. They used to have day shifts and they had night shifts. So during the week, Monday through Friday, there were always custodians there. If a group didn't show up, that was not an issue. The custodian was probably happy. They didn't show up. I don't have to worry about them. Let me move on. Well, now they've done different ways of working the custodian. So since they don't have kids in school, some of them, they're not there in the evening. They get their work done and they're gone. The only reason they're at schools is if we have use in there. So we've had a little bit of conflict making sure that people are reading the schedules, custodians are reading the schedules. And on the other side, it's important that our user groups show up if they're scheduled or let us know. Because unlike in the past, if they didn't show up, it was okay. Now when they don't show up, custodians have been hired specifically to be there for them during the week and they don't show up. We're working through those issues. We have, just to let you know, there's a fabulous new person at Community Use. Alex Bryant is her name. She is tremendous. She has communicative. She is on point. She reaches out. So we've gotten really good rapport there. But that's kind of the winter gym update. I'm actually pleasantly surprised at how things have gone so far.
Yeah, and just to review, Mark, while we had a very small supply, we also had a small demand, and that's why we thought we could go forward. And it's a good thing. Anytime we can make use of the facilities without disrupting things is good. So right behind your mic's on mute, the next most common phrase is, Mark, is that an old hand or is that a new hand? because your hand's up. And I think so is Gary.
Mine was supposed to be the middle finger. I hit the wrong one.
Then we'll go to Gary.
Who may be muted.
He's got mute disease.
Same problem everybody else has.
Good. God.
Thanks for the report. And if you can push back on the schools just to let them know that obviously this is new to us about the custodians not being there at night. I will make sure, Jeff Stein and I will make sure that we get the information out to our basketball group, but we've had some of those pushbacks, early on. And knowing that information is helpful. And then my sidebar comment would be, can we get Alex to maybe show up to these meetings?
I think she's just part of the group. We can certainly request that through Vicki Garner's office. And I think, Gary, one of the things that was nice is that I think this weekend, the past weekend, you guys canceled your weekend gym use. And I think CYA canceled their weekend gym use also. And we were able to reach out to those schools and let them know ahead of time. And that was a really positive thing on both ends. You guys letting us know and us letting the schools know. So that was a really good thing.
Somebody needs an oil can on their chair. I'm going to move on. Committee reports. Gary, Sports Tourism Implementation Committee.
Excellent. And I got my mute off. I left it off so I wouldn't get stuck again.
Yeah, we just got to get Mark to take his hand down.
Yeah, Mark, just lower your hand.
Mine says it's lowered.
All right.
I see it. There it is. It's gone. Thank you. Go ahead, Gary. Sorry.
All right. So as the member from the Council on the Sports Tourism Task Force, Pat Harity got the final report from the consultant CSL. They sent out their final report. Pat sent out a message. Subsequently, Pat got with, I think, Brian Hill and a few other executives within the county, and they requested a pilot test be performed for scheduling tournaments to try to figure out the parameters. So a small committee met the other day looking for how to establish this pilot test. We're looking for input from the council for questions and ideas. Some of the parameters that we looked at is, number one is trying to determine what the goal is of the task or of the pilot test. We thought of utilizing a few holiday weekends to try to minimize impact on community use. And we talked about turf space, maybe just using a limited number of turf space for the pilot test, using 2 field complexes, and then creating a limit on the number of fields for the pilot test. So overall, what needs to happen is this small committee is going to have to meet a couple of times, and the effort is going to be to try to get as much information and come back to the February meeting to get a vote from the council to proceed with the pilot test. I know Steve was on, Mike was on, a couple of others if you guys want to add to that, but I think outside of reporting anything specific, I think just in general, the county's looking for a pilot test, and I think that the task force, the Sports Tourism Task Force, is still in full operation. Pat plans to have another meeting within the next couple of months, but they would like to do some type of pilot test in the interim.
Sure, I'll see Mike. You got your hand up, so we'll go to Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick to follow with what Gary said. There might have been some confusion in the way some things were worded. Gary's right that the report that was sent out is the consultant's report. some people, in some places it was written as if it was the task force's final report. That is the report that's been. I'm also on the task force, but that's just a report that was given to the task force for its consideration and thoughtfulness as it works through the process. I just promised I would reemphasize that.
Okay, just a couple of comments. I say it's a small group, but a vigorous discussion. We are looking, it's brainstorming, so we're looking at big issues and small issues. We need to first focus on the bigger issues, setting some parameters around the pilot and trying to articulate what success looks like and what lack of success looks like. But there's no, monopoly on wisdom here. So anybody that has a suggestion, a question, or a comment, submit it to Gary or through Jason to the committee, so we can make sure that when we come back to council with a proposal that we've already considered any major concerns that people may have. Any other comments, questions on the Sports Tourism Implementation Committee? Seeing none, I'm going to move to the Allocation Committee, and that's Mike Thompson. Mike.
Thanks. It's just the note that along the same lines of what Gary's talking about, while we're looking at the pilot, the Allocation Committee is going to be meeting and beginning to have the conversations for parameters and questions that need to be asked around the same issues for a long-term policy. We're in a situation where we now have approval, and as was pointed out in the minutes, the baseball complex, which will be the first baseball tournament type complex facility that's going to be in the county. And we just need to begin to understand the different ways that could be allocated and the different questions within it. And so the committee hasn't met yet. I think the first priority is to work through Gary's committee, because that's going to raise a bunch of questions that are going to be longer term questions that can begin to be addressed. But again, the reminder that the county's allocation policy, the athletic council, the committee will meet. Last time we met for 2 years before we made our recommendations. We don't have the opportunity to do that.
That's a long meeting.
It was a very long meeting, where it is our hope that we would move it more quickly this time. Then it would come to the athletic council. The athletic council's recommendation goes to the head of NCS, which then, with all of that, it has to actually go to the board of supervisors. And it's actually that policy is in a policy that is approved by the board of supervisors. So it's a little bit different than some of the other things we do. So we're just going to get that process going.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike on Allocation Committee? Jason, can you help me with the rundown of sports reps? Call them out.
Yep, I got you. Let's baseball council.
Hello. Yes, we actually have a baseball council meeting tonight at 8, right after this meeting. So I don't have a lot to report right now. We are going to be announcing tonight some virtual meetings virtual workshops for baseball families throughout Fairfax County, some of which will be educational, some of which will be even things like mental health, which we'll probably get Jesse involved with. But we want to do, keep these kids engaged over the next few months before baseball starts back up. So we're excited to launch that here in the next week or so. That is all I have from baseball.
All right. Basketball. Did anybody hop on for basketball? All right. Fast pitch softball. All right. Football. You're up, Mark.
Still in a wait and see. Of course, this is off season and planning period for all the organizations, and as well as flag and youth tackle. But pretty much a wait and see. I think the compressed springtime of the carryover of the fall sports scholastically and how it integrates with the finishing up with winter and start of spring is going to be interesting, and we'll play heavy on decisions going forward. So we have a vigilante committee seeking out caches of vaccines storage that people are hoarding. And we'll report out on that when we find a cache.
Check Gary's basement.
No, that's it. It's really a wait and see, but all the clubs are working hard on coming up with options, just depending on how the years may go. There's no certainty to anything.
Lacrosse Council, Mary Ann.
Yes, we are heavily into our spring planning season and just trying to negotiate all the obstacles that COVID is presenting. Aside from that, I've nothing really to report.
Adult softball, Carl.
Nothing to report, especially other than season planning for the spring to build on what, given the COVID restrictions on the success that we had in the when the season resumed last July. So basically in the planning stages for the spring.
All right. Rob, you had your hand up.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to add one thing while I remembered. I apologize. Is there any direction, and Mark and I talked about this briefly, Martino, has there been any direction on, FCPS has evolved, and I'm sure will continue to evolve over the next month or two on their COVID protocols. And we had fairly strict COVID protocols in baseball this past summer and fall. But do we feel like there'll be any direction from NCS or from us or from anyone in terms of outdoor sports and potentially asking everyone to wear a mask at all times or any protocol? Or are we just going to leave it up to the user groups like we've done in the past to ensure that we're following the governor's guidelines and everyone else's? Does that all make sense? Because I just want to be able to report that back to the baseball council tonight, if there is anything to report.
Mike, you got your hand up.
Yeah, Rob, this is Mike Thompson. I think that the important piece of what you just said would be that this council would not issue anything. So we wouldn't. I know that we try to facilitate information, but I think things are so fluid. We just have to keep watching the governor and the Fairfax County Health Department, especially if there's a story in the Post today about another variant. But I know Steve and I co-chaired that committee. We're not gonna issue anything.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And Rob, Mark, were you going to jump in, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I was gonna. Well, we can kind of piggyback off each other. I think our goal was to kind of, just like we've done indoor, which has been following FCPS protocol. I think outdoor, what we're doing is following the health department guidelines, the Virginia High School League guidelines, and letting our user groups know, hey, these are the guidelines that you have to follow. I know that outside, we have our monitors going out and we're checking the thing, but it certainly is up to the user groups to make sure that they are following the proper protocols. That's kind of my take on it. Sarah?
No, that's perfect. The only thing I would add is just that Rob will definitely let you know if anything changes or we need to, similar to what we did for inside, we have to lay out exactly what the parameters are. So you'll hear from us, just not yet, but as soon as we possibly can, we will.
Perfect. Thank you.
I see John's got his hand up. John?
Thank you. I think Mark actually covered everything I would say from an FCPS standpoint about outdoors. I think that's absolutely on the ball.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Jason.
All right. Soccer Council. I think Trish had to hop off. Volleyball, Chuck.
Yeah, I suppose volleyball's preparing for the spring season. The rec leagues. I think I reported last time that the club programs were up and running, mostly in private facilities. Those seem to be going pretty well. But I just did a quick look at all the Fairfax rec volleyball programs. It looks like only 4 of the 8 have officially announced a spring season, and maybe another one relatively soon. So I think everyone's taking a little bit of a cautious approach. Back to the bigger question of what's the benefit of doing a youth sport? I think my own McLean Youth Volleyball Council, when we talked about it, we kind of decided to open up our program for that very reason, give kids a chance to play, get them out there. So I'm going to meet with the rest of the Volleyball Council early next month to try to encourage the rest of the programs to join. Certainly, again, there are added challenges being an indoor sport, but it looks like so far basketball and club volleyball have had success, so we'll keep doing that. One other bit of tidbit of news, my own McLean Youth Volleyball program, I've had it registration up for a week, and I've already had 235 people sign up, which would be good even in a non-COVID time. So you build it, they will come. People want to play, again, families, kids, they want to get out and do something athletic. So again, I'll keep encouraging volleyball folks to do that. But my one question was just answered. See if there's anything that was going to be planned differently in the spring for indoor sports. But it sounds like everybody's kind of a wait and see mode. Figure out if any adjustments have to be made. Definitely a lot of concerns about this more faster spreading variant of COVID-19. But I'm hoping, again, with good precautions, following the rules, exceeding rules where possible is going to work out. That's it for me.
Thank you, Chuck.
I think that's it, Steve.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to matters of interest from the governing bodies. Do we have anybody from the schools?
I'm here. This is John Chapman from the Community Use Office. Honestly, here to take any questions you may have of us at this point. I think Mark did in talking about how we're rolling out things now with indoor. Kind of was focused on that, and in our office, and this is me saying this, not Vicky, but in our office, our focus has been working kind of hand in hand with NCS sponsored organizations to help folks enter the building, make sure we're supporting them, and make sure folks are complying. We are kind of hands off on that and kind of leaving it up to the user groups to make sure that they're complying. I know Mark has talked about his staff supporting those user groups, but we are there to support them as well in that effort to make sure we do have some opportunities for folks to use facilities. As we get into, and as somebody already mentioned, we don't know where this is going to go, and so we are trying to be you might not think we're trying to be flexible, but we're trying to do so as safely and as possible, because of course I don't think any of us wants any big stories in any of these media outlets that are looking to take advantage of organizations that are not mindful of what's going on. So I'm here to take any kind of questions or comments back to Vicky that folks may have.
Rob, is that an old hand or a new hand? I'm guessing it's old because he's on mute too.
Sorry, that's following Mark Miana's lead. I'll lower it. Sorry.
Yeah. So thank you, John. I think the words of the year are flexible and cautious.
Indeed.
So
Indeed.
I think that's good advice for everybody. Any questions for John?
Just to touch base real quick, I think this has really been probably eye-opening for all of us, and I think we have worked really well with FCPS in this, that no one knew what was going to happen January 4th. No one did. And I think just the communication we've had so far and between the offices has been really good. And there have been issues. We know we're going to have problems on both sides, and so far it's been really good. So we're going to, hopefully we'll continue that.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. For Park Authority, Carl or Mike?
Oh, nothing really new from the last meeting, other than we're just finishing up all the fields and some of the outdoor stuff we committed to over the winter and this spring. So everything's ready in the spring to go, ready to go in the spring. That's about all I got.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the one thing I'd add is, for those of y'all that don't know, Kurt Kincannon, the director of the Park Authority, is retiring. And he has been through his tenure with the Park Authority, he has been a strong advocate and supporter of our youth sports programs. But we are just now beginning the process of putting together a search. My bet is that if things go well, and that you're probably looking at August, September timeframe for a new director to be in place. But for those of y'all that know Kirk or have interacted with Kirk, I just want to let you know that he is retiring. I think Mark has a question.
Yeah, Kurt, are you in contact with Todd Johnson at all?
I can be. I believe he's still around. He has retired as well.
I know. No, I know that. Who didn't miss that bandwagon?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you could have him give me a call, give him my number, tell him I'm trying to get in touch with him because he lost, his Park Authority phone wasn't willed to him. So I'm just curious.
I will do that.
My hand is going down.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions for the Park Authority? If not, we'll move on to NCS. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. I didn't introduce myself, so I'm sorry. I know many of you from way back, but right now do I look like Chris? I'm acting in Chris's behalf right now. So as you know, Chris got a promotion and he's now the deputy county executive. And so I'm acting, the acting director. Trying to act is the appropriate word. But I am here if you all need anything. Already kind of dove back into it with the tournament stuff. So I'm here if I can help. Email me, get in touch with me any way you can. I'd be glad to be of support to you all in any way. And it's nice to see you all. I used to come a number of years ago. But in terms of other NCS updates, wanted to just acknowledge that we've had some staff, a little bit of staffing lull, and that has impacted our ability to process scholarships. So if you are a group or groups that are waiting for scholarship reimbursement, we will be jumping on that and getting back to you as soon as possible about processing that. And that's the only announcement that I had. Mark, Martino, or Jason, or Keisha, do you all have any others?
Yeah, sorry, I got bumped off for a second, and then I was hoping to come back on after NCS, but that didn't work out. The only thing I will touch base on back with the winter, I think some of you may be getting a lot of questions about this. It's the actual wearing of masks while people are playing. That has been probably, we've gotten a number of calls about that. And just another way we're following along with what FCPS is doing. That's what they are mandating for their athletes, coaches, everybody. And so that's what we are doing also. So if you get questions from your constituents who are saying, it's not my kid can't breathe right, he's, what we're doing is following what FCPS is allowing. And if at any point that changes, then obviously we will update. But that's really been the biggest issue from community users to us. Why are you doing this to us? Why are you making us? And it's really kind of our cooperation with FCPS that we're trying to do.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions for NCS? Then I will move to the new business, the scholarship program. I got a little bit of a lead in there from Sarah Gary.
So welcome back. I seem to be pretty popular today. This is exciting. Hopefully next month I'm not. I asked this to be put on the agenda. I'm not sure how many of you are aware that Fairfax County has a scholarship reimbursement program. The youth program that Jeff Stein and I run, we've been participating in this reimbursement program for a number of years. And what we have seen over the course of the last close to 10 years, maybe 8 years, is I've got stats to share with you that back in 2014, we saw up to 65% of the scholarships that my program gave out. We got reimbursement up to 65%. Over the years, that dropped from 65 to 50, down to 40, and most recently in 2019, it had dropped down to 18%. With the current COVID and problems that everybody is having, I'm sure every council member on here and every sport rep here knows the number of scholarship requests that you get has increased tremendously because parents losing their jobs, out of work, financial assistance. I thought it would be important to bring this up to the council and maybe find a way to push back through the county to see if some of that large amount of money that the county gets, maybe they can funnel some of it to the youth programs that are, dishing out of their pockets. I know every sport group I talk to is, if they haven't folded, they're struggling to stay afloat. SYA, and I'll speak for Mark Abbott with CYA, we're no different. You lose 2.5 full seasons of revenues. It makes it hard to stay afloat unless you're, a pretty solvent organization. We've been lucky enough to be in that boat, but I'm sure there's a lot of council members here who are seeing large increases in financial aid requests or scholarship requests, or just flat out, kids not playing enough. So I would just like to present that idea, go forward with it, have a discussion about it, and see if it's something that we can't try to push that number back up, if not permanently, at least temporarily. And I know I brought this up a couple years ago. Karen talked about it and said that, she was in support of the idea. And then COVID hit, so we just kind of dropped the ball. But I just think it's an important issue. We need to get the kids out there, like Jesse is talking about. Mental health is a big issue, trying to get as many kids as we can involved in sports. But unfortunately, maybe not all of the youth programs in Fairfax County are able to provide the financial aid that my youth group can, or CYA can, or maybe McLean Youth can, not to pick on anybody with in those particular areas, but I think it may be useful to try to push back on that and see if we can't get some more money for that reimbursement program.
Okay, thank you. I know Mark has a question, but I got one first. So you said the percentage you're getting is going down. I assume that the absolute funding level from the county is going down. It's not just like everyone else figured it out.
No, it is. It is. Yeah. Per Karen, and Sarah, you may know as well, but per Karen, a couple of years ago, the county had taken the money away over the years. So yeah, it's not more people applying for it. It's just they're taking the funding away.
Yeah, just excuse my ignorance, but if we go forward, we would want to have that kind of information in a letter that we would prepare. Sarah, did you have something you wanted to say in response?
No, I actually think it's a little bit of both. So definitely would never contradict Karen because she knows everything. But I do believe that I think some of our efforts increased some children to be able to apply, which was great, but then it lessened the amount. So I think it's both. Nonetheless, let's work from data and we'll have that information for you all.
Squeezed at both ends. Mark, you had a question.
Yeah, I'm wondering if in the past, meaning in last year and going forward with the new deal as of yesterday, stimulus money to the local, wouldn't that qualify nicely, trying to get people back to normal if Fairfax County gets any kind of allocation?
Sure. So we did the previous CARES Act funding allowed for some nonprofit sustainability grants, and I believe some of you all may have applied for those. However, that was a finite amount of money as well. The money that came through most recently through the Treasury was actually for rental assistance and for a few other things. But absolutely duly noted the concern and the request and the formal request can come later, but we can look at and should be looking at those kinds of things that can support it. So I can report back later or next month about what's possible. Again, the CARES Act money was was pretty specific in what we needed to use it for, as is this next tranche of money. But I'll do some looking, okay?
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I just think that unless you ask, you're not going to get. And a lot of those categories are flexible by design. I'm just saying that seems to me that what Gary's brought up is what everybody, this is the grassroots. This is going to the right people, if you know what I mean. So it may be something you want to consider as a line item for consideration, because you can make a hell of a strong case for it. Hadn't been before, so. Hand going down.
Okay, Mike's hand is up. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, two things. One, Gary, I'd suggest that and Sarah, I understand what you're saying about wanting to get more data, but I think that it probably makes sense for the athletic council to, through motion, probably support the idea of sending a letter to the county executive and to the board of supervisors about the importance of the scholarships and looking for ways to leverage any kind of relief funding, whether it came from federal or state government. But second, I think the longer term issue, because this was an issue even before COVID hit, I think that one of the other things is that the council should look to prepare a document, maybe with some of the data you're talking about, Sarah, but that we should take we should look to take a stand in support of more funding for the scholarship program when they go through the budget process. And folks should talk to their supervisors about that as well. But at a minimum, with the budget process that we're expected to go through, we want to ask for more and make sure it never becomes less. And I just think that that's important that be an issue that council look at, because both of those issues, they're different pots of money, but they're both important to move quickly on. So I don't know, Steve, if
go for a motion, Mike.
Yeah, I would move that the athletic council authorize Steve and Gary to draft and submit a letter to the board of supervisors and to Brian Hills, the county executive, emphasizing the need for and requesting more funding for the scholarship reimbursement fund that the county has.
Marcia seconds it.
There you go. Is there any objection to the proposed motion?
I thought that Mark liked Barbara to second things, but okay.
No, she got upset, so it's all about equity. It's all about equity.
Mark, it's a very sensitive thing. Marcia's got her hand up. Marcia, did you want to comment before we close it?
I would like to comment only to clarify the motion that I just seconded.
Okay.
Is that intended to be focused on future budget money, or are you talking about CARES Act or that type of money as well?
Yeah, no, my motion tonight was about any not CARES Act or other kinds of funding that may be out there now for immediate relief, with the idea that at the February meeting would probably make another motion, but be able to integrate the data Sarah's talking about into whatever that communication would be for the budget cycle that the board is going to go through.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, thank you for the question. Are there any other questions, and seeing none, is there any objection to the motion as seconded and clarified? Seeing no objections, the motion passes. So thank you for that motion, Mike. I think that's certainly timely and a good effort. Back to new business, the U.S. Center for Safe Sports, James Elder. Jim, you
Thank you, Steve.
Everyone hear me? Nod
Yes,
your head
sir.
I had this impulse after Christmas when I was taking this online course to get recertified for being an approved tennis instructor by the U.S. Tennis Association, and sent that out. I didn't mean to offend anybody or break any rules. I just was motivated that this was something that I thought should be considered by the Athletic Council. I think all of you appreciate the key role of coaches. When I think about this, I can still remember the name of my junior high school JV basketball coach and every coach I have had since, but I can not remember almost all the teachers I had in high school or college. So the impact is gigantic. When I ran a youth sports organization in Reston years ago, we almost had a very unfortunate incident, but thank God one of the parents of one of the kids on a particular team made us aware that one of the parents had been convicted of child abuse, who had signed up to be a coach. And we were very thankful that we killed that before it kind of developed into anything worse. After I sent out the memo, I noticed in the Post on January the 5th that a federal appeals court had upheld a life prison sentence for a coach in Iowa, youth basketball coach, who used his position to sexually exploit more than 400 boys over a 20-year period. I found that astounding. And, you know, I just think that the influence on kids that like Jesse was talking about, or the exposure that coaches have to kids, particularly during the COVID situation, makes this possibly more appropriate. I've since learned that there are more credible organizations other than the U.S. Center for Safe Sports that I endorsed, and I'd be very open to organizations using any credible vendor. I also noticed from something Eric Koziski, sorry I botched his name, Eric, if you're on the phone, that organization is partnered with the Sports Events and Tourism Association, which I think Visit Fairfax belongs to. The program that I took the 90-minute video on addresses mandatory reporting, sexual misconduct awareness, emotional and physical misconduct. Generally, I'm very reluctant to recommend any additional bureaucratic requirement for people in youth sports around Fairfax County, but I think that this deserves some consideration and would welcome anybody's comments. Thank you.
Sure, I'll be first. My 7th grade coach was Bob Dwyer. But secondarily, I think kind of reflecting what Sarah said about other training is not making it mandatory, but providing the information with recommendations. Again, I would be concerned about, again, mandating too much and being able to enforce any mandates, but providing the information with a recommendation is a different thing. Gary, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to add a comment that we actually at one of the council meetings had a presentation, I believe, I'm trying to remember the name of the organization. I think it was called SCAN. But at any rate, it's a free process that does exactly what Safe Sport does. And it doesn't cost you $20 per team or whatever it is. I utilized it in my youth organization with several of our sports, but some of our sports have governing bodies that require that they use Safe Sport and pay the fees. But if you're doing, if you're running an organization or you're a council member representing a bunch of youth groups, $20 a pop, it gets expensive. And if there's a free product that follows the same guidelines as the federal mandate, and you can get it for free through the county, I think that's a win-win. Still does the same thing Jim's talking about. So,
could you spell the name of that organization, Gary?
I thought it was SCAN,
It looks like Jeff Deal actually put a link in the chat if you guys are interested in going to it.
And what is it, Jason? What's the name of it?
It's it's www.scanva.org.
Yeah, SCAN, correct?
Correct.
I
Yep.
believe it stands for Stop Child Abuse and Neglect,
Excellent.
if it's the same organization.
Done, Gary, because Mike's got his hand up. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, I'm done.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Safe Sport, it's a great program. VYSA, the Virginia Soccer Association, mandates it. And so there's a lot of folks, and you get access to it for free. I'm not sure if Lula is on the call or not. But I was just texting with her to double check, along with a couple other people. But I'm on the call. So she might have more background. But to your point, I don't know that it needs to be mandated, but I do think it's important to talk about and also let folks know that several leagues and associations that lots of groups belong to are now requiring it that direction, absent any kind of county mandate.
Okay, Mark's got his hand up, and it's a new hand.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm left-handed. In this day and time, especially in a subject like this, it's what you don't do. Whether it's mandated, whether it's there, if it's provided, you've done something. If you don't do anything, you're really, this is a subject that's getting more and more accelerated. And let's be honest, I grew up Catholic, and Catholic Church is still wearing the brands of all this as well. Nobody is absent from all this. You know, it's just a thing. So my point is, whether you use SCAN, whether you mandate it or don't, presenting programs like this, to have them available, then it falls to the youth groups or leagues, whether they adopt them or not. And you got to start somewhere. And I just think emphasizing like that, and then maybe take it to another plateau, because strengths in numbers. Eventually, maybe if there's prices to it, more and more people can get together, so on and so forth, like background checks. They've refined that pretty good. But absence in this area of not doing anything is a death sentence. It really is. Hand going down, a different one also.
Okay, Jim, you got your hand up, so I'll back to you.
Yes. I mean, I wasn't aware of this other organization that's being talked about by Gary and others that exist for free. I would back off of my idea to put forward a formal motion, and I just not sure that I have enough awareness right now to be the one to draft what something like this product would look like. I'd need some help with that. I'd be glad to work on it.
Okay. A question, Mark, for Mark Martino. We provide a lot of resource information on the website. Would this be something that we would provide for coaches and organizations? We talked about it for, kids at risk for suicide and things like that. Is there a similar thing for this?
I would think absolutely we could, we could get this information out to every one of our organizations. That's an easy one. And in terms of the website, I'm not sure why we wouldn't be able to put it up there. Jason, would you agree with that, or be no reason why we wouldn't be able to link that up on the website?
Yeah, I can get with Amanda, our communications person, and she can help out what we can put up there and everything.
Yeah, so I'd suggest, I'm sorry, pending, if Jim wants to pursue this further in the future, but in the meantime, making the resources available through what the means that are available to us seems like a good idea. Back to you, Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to add that we'd want to put up things that we got, or as much information as we could, because we would not want to be looking as if we are endorsing one group or the other, or especially if there's a fee associated with it. So we'll take that back and make sure we can sift through that and go through that. But SCAN, we know, is a county contracted vendor for a lot of things. But in terms of the other group, why don't you, I know you sent it, Jim, but we'll take a look and see what we could put up there right now. Okay.
That's fine. would it also include some information about which groups provide background investigations? Not just training.
Sure, it's my understanding that many of you use different vendors, right? So there's a bunch of vendors that many of you use. So it might be hard for us to put, we wouldn't want to put vendors up there that are privately connected or charge. But yeah, so that's where I'd probably stop right there. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Jim, I had my hand raised up on that.
Yes.
That is a slippery slope because you get what you pay for. We've gone through this. It's mandated in youth football. There are many great ones out there, and there's some lousy ones out there. So it's a world, like Sarah said, everybody kind of uses their own for varying degrees and so on and so forth. But I can help you with that as far as just some of the experiences and some of the good ones that are out there, as I'm sure Gary and other people online can as well. But you got to be careful of that. The word is you get what you pay for. There's some that don't even, you can be across the river in Montgomery County, 6 miles away and it not come up. And a guy can commute and coach, and he's a convicted felon. Plus the criteria you want to use and so on and so forth. So it's a slippery slope. It's a good one. It's necessary, but it needs a lot of thought to go into if you haven't done that before.
I hope the county, Sarah and your group can figure out how this could be phrased so that it doesn't violate anything or point people in the wrong direction or advocate certain vendors over others. We kind of need a Consumer Reports recommendations on this topic.
Right. Well, what I can say for now, and we'll take the other stuff under consideration, is that anything that has to do with training community organizations about recognizing child abuse and neglect, that's an easy one. We have providers, we have, so we can put that on there. The links to mandated reporting law, the links to actually the state has probably the videos you watched about becoming a mandated reporter. Anything like that is very easy for us to put in a resource area of our website. It's when it gets more specific and or cost and or a private vendor that we have to be careful about. So that's a given. We'll make sure all of that stuff is up to date and you'll have that. These other kinds of things though, in terms of a vendor that a group might use, I would say that you guys would talk amongst each other about that kind of stuff.
Which I think is what, when this became when background checks became mandatory for certified youth organizations or certified athletic or whatever it's called, I believe you guys came back with the same response and said that right. You weren't able to put any vendor, you weren't able to recommend any vendors because that might be seen as a county endorsement, right. Because because there were so many out there, it was literally impossible to list them all.
Okay, any further comment? I think we're making progress there, Jim. Would you agree?
Yes, I'm pleased. Thank you.
Okay, good. I'm gonna move on then to our.
I think. Sorry, Gary had a question.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering. Maybe I think Jim's onto something with this. Maybe Sarah's, not to give you guys more work, but is it something that maybe the athletic council can share what their minimum requirements are, because that leads to some of Mark's notes about, we have, in my program, we have minimum requirements of, background checks have to be done. You can do local searches, you can do statewide searches, regional, national searches. Is it for coaches? Is it for everybody? Is it for any volunteer? Maybe we can consolidate resources and maybe NCS could put out a minimum expectation for the CAO category. And I don't know, Mike, if that's already in there or not.
I think I worked with many of you on that policy, and
right.
and that policy is very specific. It says that or sports organizations need to have a policy
Right.
about what it is that you will be doing in terms of background checks. It doesn't specify what the parameters are. And there was a lot of back and forth about why that is, and particularly because you all being private entities. Now we need to make sure that you have one. You have a policy about background checks and fingerprint checks, or whatever we called it. I forget. I think it was background checks.
It was background.
It was background, right? So I apologize. We haven't revisited that with the county attorney. She was pretty comfortable. Who is now the county attorney was pretty comfortable with that directive. Mike, what else do you remember?
No, we got pretty. This is something Mark and I and a variety of us, had all worked on, and we got some pretty definitive direction from the county attorney about what the county could do and recommend. I wonder, to Gary's point, if maybe the thing to do is, and I know that you guys did a survey of some sort when we started that process in terms of who was doing background checks, but maybe there's a way to do a survey monkey or something and send it to all of the youth organizations that receive permitted field space. I know that they won't all give it back, but we might be able to ask the questions that Gary's looking for and at least get an understanding of what's happening. But I do think that maybe the other thing to do is to consider creating a document for NCS to create a document that outlines what the requirements are, like mandatory reports and all that kind of stuff. And maybe, since so many of the organizations many of these organizations are run by and supported by volunteers, and there's transitions and things like that. Maybe that document once a year or every other year with those reminders, and stuff should go out to all the youth groups.
So let me take both parts of that. What the CAO requirements are, we can absolutely do that, but not all groups are certified athletic organizations. Most are. So I think that's fine that we can talk about kind of safety, or we can have some one pager around that. In terms of surveying organizations about what are they doing, I'd want to just be, I know it's an inquiry, it's a query or an inquiry about what people are doing, but I'd be a little bit cautious for it to not seem as though we're doing a compliance kind of thing or anything like that. So let's talk about that.
I have a Survey Monkey account, so I can work with you and Gary, and I can throw the survey out there and then see who responds and give the information to the council, so that you and I can work on that then, if that's the way it needs to be done. But I think that my other point wasn't just about the background check stuff. I know you're putting a lot of stuff on the website.
Yeah.
That's a more passive way of communicating. I'm just suggesting that maybe a standard operating procedure should be that, like, every year, every 2 years, the requirements, like the state legal requirements on concussions and concussion training, the state legal requirements on mandatory reporter stuff, those kinds of, that some kind of a document that says these are what you're required to do, be created, kept up to date, and sent out to the organizations on some regular basis.
I mean, I personally think this would be a good brainstorming session with other members of the council, adding or subtracting, but starting with a document like that would make it a quicker exercise.
Yes.
When all this came about, there was very few that did background checks, and they were questionable degree of depth, really. But now maybe it's the time, 10, 15 years later here, to see where we are in this. One of the big drawbacks was in a youth organization, when it started off, and there was a couple of youth groups, who is the possessor of this information? And I'm telling you what, you never look at somebody. If somebody has a ding, that may be an allegation, you don't look at that person the same way. It may have been a mistake and not rectified on a record, paper record I'm talking about. So all of that threw it into a recognized organization that did it electronically, and the anonymity was protected. There was ways of doing it. You always have to have a person that's in charge, so to speak. But again, helping youth groups, helping organizations that are not maybe as strong and as deep, it might be worth an organized brainstorming session at this time, some meeting, okay? I think it's time well spent to see where we are in that area. But it's a hot one.
Hey, Jim, your hand's still up. Is that the old hand?
No.
Or
Didn't mean that.
no, it's okay.
There, lowered
Okay,
it.
so
Sorry.
So Steve, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
I think that these suggestions, I would agree with what Mark is saying, is to have, and I know I can't make it per se, but I do think I'd like some other support from the members of the council to talk through not only this issue, but also ways to communicate and support organizations in the interim to be able to have, whether it be information kind of one pagers or what they might be. So it's not only talking about the problem, but also what do we do about it? And I'd love to be able to get some help for that with that.
I'm thinking a committee's heading our way. I just don't have a name for it yet.
Steve.
No, that's not the name of the committee. So, it's not certification. It's, screening requirements or something like that. I guess the first thing we have to do is come up with a name for this committee and then get some volunteers. But let's try and have a name. And if those that are interested in participating in that discussion, just send Jason a message. And, if we have enough people and we come up with a name, we'll form the committee. If we need a few more people, we'll put out a call for volunteers.
Spoken as a super bureaucrat. That's a beautiful thing.
It's what I do.
I know.
Anyway, as a super bureaucrat, I also get through the agenda, and we're on to old business. Is there any old business? Then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Hearing no objection. The meeting's adjourned. Thank everybody for the discussion. It was very good. Hopefully we'll make some progress on a number of fronts in the meantime. See you all later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.